Hello, hello, hello. This is your host Francesco. I hope you enjoyed the first part. This is the second part of the podcast and the interview with Lisa Forte. We're gonna talk, as we were talking in the first part, on social engineering, tips, suggestion on how to avoid getting scammed, getting that annoying call from the bank, pretending they're at the bank, and then they're getting annoyed themselves when you discover they're not there. They're not your bank. We're gonna share some more tips, some stories, sometimes funny, sometimes creepy, and I hope you enjoy. And I hope this one is educational for all of us and all of you out there. Please stay safe, stay vigilant. This is Francesco Cipollone, your host, as part of the Cloud Security Alliance and the IC Square from London team. Enjoy. Can you actually share a stories around one of your stories that you can share about one social engineer that came towards you and one social engineering particularly effective or particularly hilarious that you did?
Yeah, so one of the cases I worked on that I think kind of brings in quite a lot of these things that we've talked about. It was a law firm based here in Bristol. And basically what happened was one of the lawyers got sent a Facebook message, and this Facebook message said something along the lines of, hi Rob, I'm really amazed with your career. I've been following it. I've been following your blog writing pieces that you've done. You're a really great lawyer. I'm a law student, and I'd really appreciate it if you could just take a look at my CV and tell me what you think I could do with more experience in. So flattered, as you would be, this lawyer opens the attachment in this Facebook message. And he reads through the CV and he writes and whatever, writes back. But what he doesn't realize is that this CV that was sent dropped a particular piece of malware onto the law firm system that gave basically the attackers sight of everything that was going on. And most critically, they could see what was going on with the bank account. So they could see when the people logged into the bank account, they could see the balance, they could see the direct debits, they could see the fact that two clients had just paid in a load of mortgage money into the account to buy a house. And what happened next was they called the law firm up. And they said to the receptionist, oh, hi, we're from whatever bank, Barclays, for example. And what has happened is none of your direct debits can come out of your account because the account hasn't been validated. So what we need you to do is add us as a payee onto the account. You need to then transfer £1 out of the account to our account, and we'll transfer it back, and then everything will be set up. So the receptionist was a little bit suspicious, and she said, well, how do I know you're Barclays? Prove to me that you're Barclays. And they said, okay, that's fine. Well, we can see that the account has got a balance of this much. We can see that there's a payment at the end of the month to Virgin Media for £50. We can see that the last payment was made on this date. And they could cite all of this information because they could see it all. So the receptionist thinking, okay, well, they must be my bank. 100% they must be my bank. So she says, okay, I'll add that all. I'll send it all across to you. So that's what she does. And she goes off to lunch. And on Monday morning, after the weekend, she comes back in, and one of the partners says, look, there's been a bit of an issue. Apparently, the money has all gone through our account. Can you just go and check it? And they look, and basically £300,000 had been taken from the bank account. So they call their actual bank, and the bank says, well, we're not going to reimburse you because, technically, you added the attackers, onto the account. You transferred them some money, and that was how they managed to transfer more. And they didn't have insurance. So in order to pay this money back to their clients who were hoping to buy houses, the partners of this law firm had to actually remortgage their own houses to raise the money to pay back their clients. And this all came and originated from a Facebook message.
So stop replying to Facebook, call back your bank whenever you're getting calls, and cybersecurity insurance. If we can
Yeah,
summarize top three elements that you will give away from these stories.
yeah, I would say, unsolicited Facebook messages, treat with as much caution as you would an email. If someone calls up pretending to be your bank, even if they've got the right information, don't do anything. Go and find the number and call them back again to clarify. And I think some awareness training for the staff in that law firm to realize that these sorts of things are attacks that happen, and actually you've got to be cautious of it, because to be honest, all of these things were avoidable, and I think that was the most frustrating thing for the partners of this law firm, that it wasn't this super sophisticated attack. It was all avoidable, and I think that was very frustrating for them.
So Chani actually raised a very good point, that if you're getting scammed, can you actually recover your money through action fraud, and how effective is action fraud?
So action fraud is the mechanism by which we report fraud and cybercrime in the United Kingdom. They won't necessarily recover your money, but the banking system, it's a bit difficult because what we're seeing quite a lot of is banks saying, well, look, if you actually did something, if you actually transferred money or you added someone onto your account, we're not going to reimburse you. And I think actually that's probably the right and fair decision by the banks, because it's not their security issues that led to you being attacked. The other factor that comes in is insurance, and some people are very in favor of cyber insurance, others less so. The cautionary tale I usually have with cyber insurance is that most often it excludes social engineering. So if one member of your staff has been socially engineered, the chances of you recovering from your cyber insurance policy plummets. So it is very, very difficult. You just got to hope your bank cover it, I think, is probably your sort of main hope.
So shall we all stop together in doing cyber insurance, or shall we all look in the fine print and see what's covered and what's not?
Definitely the fine print. I mean, I would be very cautious. I've seen some terrible policies that have said that unless you can prove that this was a 0-day attack on you and didn't involve social engineering, we won't cover you.
That's very convenient.
Yeah, which basically means there is no attack they will cover for the most part, because attackers aren't going to waste a 0-day attack on a small law firm.
Yeah.
So I think the fine print is really key, and making sure that you don't get to that point, as much as you can do, making sure you get, you're not ever getting to a point where that really becomes a concern.
So have you ever been involved in an active social engineering attack? So when either where you were on the police or your current firm, have you ever been involved in an organization called, it's like, we are under attack, somebody's social engineering us, somebody has thrown a bomb, or for example a ransomware, and is blackmailing us to give them the money? How do we react? Have you ever coached somebody in reacting or negotiating?
So we did have one where it was an insider threat more than it was sort of outside social engineering. And this person just hadn't showed up for work. There was sort of evidence that certain screenshots of data had found their way onto the dark web. And everything just started being pieced together. So obviously, naturally, they panicked and wanted some guidance as to, what on earth do we do here? So yeah, in the insider threat area, we do see that quite a bit.
So that's interesting. So let's open the floor for questions. Does anybody has any question directly for Lisa? You can either write in the chat or or shout it out by voice? How do you go about physical pen testing? Chani asks.
In terms of how does the process work, or in terms of techniques used?
I think it's technique you use.
It depends on the company, really, and depends also on kind of how many offices they have and how big the company is. But generally speaking, you're likely to be a contractor or somebody who has access into the building or could have access into the building. And I tend to find little things like having a clipboard with a checklist of things. Where you have to be like, okay, yep, okay, I need to go into this room to do this piece. And because you have this clipboard, people are like, wow, must be proper and official now because there's a piece of paper involved. Yeah. So I think strategic use of props would be a definite one. Being on the phone is another one, because you can't actually be questioned. If you're in the middle of a phone call, they're not going to question you, so you can tend to allow your way into different places
and act important.
Yeah, exactly.
So what else? Anything from anyone else? Or I have a list of questions myself. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so how many times do you work with the finance department versus other departments? So do you do testing or training with the actual people involved in those scams or potentially involved in those scams?
Yeah, we do. We actually have the only GCHQ certified social engineering course, which we're very proud of. And often a lot of our clients will actually ask us to come in and train their high risk users. So these are people like finance, HR, people who have access to maybe live client data, stuff like that. So we'll come in and do like a more intensive training with their high risk users. And I think sometimes actually even just the company telling certain groups of people that you are a high risk user, I think it makes them feel really special. So they sort of end up thinking, oh, I'm a high risk user, I need to take this seriously. So I think there is some psychology in there as well that you can use to really make certain groups of people take it seriously.
Are you social engineering people and taking things seriously?
Maybe, but I don't take a lot of things seriously, so I'm not sure if this really works.
That's great. We need to have fun. We only have one life anyway.
Exactly.
So Chani was asking if you have any more tips about spearfishing, either receiving or doing. I hope you're not planning for it. Or spearfishing protection. Actually, no, she corrected. She's not planning any spearfishing attack.
Yeah, a new business venture for her maybe. So in terms of tips for spearfishing, I think the first and most important thing to remember is that for spearfishing to work, because spearfishing is targeted at you as an individual, they need information on you. So locking down your social media, not accepting people on platforms that you post any personal information who you're not 100% sure you know who they are. So for example, my LinkedIn and my Twitter, they are used for my professional capacity. I don't post things about my personal life on there. But then my Facebook and my Instagram are locked down. I only have people on there, a handful of people who are my family and my friends, and I share more personal content. So I think this is something we have to learn to do, to segment those two kind of things, because if you want to post everything about your life, that's fine, but you have to be aware that you have to be more paranoid about every single email you receive, because a lot of information's out there. I mean, one of the classic ones is Amazon wish lists. By default, they're public and searchable. So in the search box of Amazon, you can type someone's name, you can pull up their wish list. Unless you've gone into your own wish list and made it private, it is public. So if you imagine that you wanted to attack me and you found my wish list and you found that there was a specific book that I'd put on there, you could email me pretending to be Amazon saying, oh, we've seen this book on your wish list and there's 50% off today, click on this link. And I'm way more likely to click that link because I think, oh, well, that is on my wish list and only Amazon should know that. But it's public information. So I think it's really, really important that the biggest defense to spearfishing is go and find out what's online about you. And if you think it's too revealing, make it private or take it off, because that's where they need to get information from in order to email you in the first place.
So considering we have all this, and I think, and I've seen this ramping up specifically in the last year with those campaigns, why don't we have, specifically on the URL stuff, why don't we have things embedded in browser and social engineering in those kind of messages that dissect the message? I mean, that looks at the link and saying, hold on a sec, this might not be valid. And I think browser are doing something around HTTPS. That should be actually the least of the worries.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent there is that sort of technology out there, and I think big companies, this sort of thing is less likely in that respect. But what you've got to remember is that only works when there's a link. But if I email you and I ask you for your login credentials and I haven't included a link, then those defenses aren't going to pick that up. So I think, the paramount first defense is not allowing attackers to get that information on you in the first place.
But then we have you touch point on Twitter, on social accounts, on LinkedIn. As effectively business leader, we thought about being thought leader, and the common trend right now, and I don't know if that's a social engineering campaign, is actually to share personal story, personal information, make it personal to communicate with others. So how do we balance sharing versus protecting, especially for us that we are in the information security industry?
I think that's a personal risk assessment for you, whether you think it's more important to post detailed personal information or whether you feel it's more important to be secure and not have to be as concerned that you're going to be targeted. I think if you're in information security, we've all got to be aware that we've probably got a target painted well and truly on our backs. We are, high value targets. We are targets that at the very least attackers might want to humiliate. And so I think we need to just be a little bit more cautious and lead by example. But with the same breath, I do also understand that it's difficult when you have to present this sort of personal image out to the public. So I think it's just about maybe heavily vetting what you write and think, what really personal information is in here, or does it just sort of have the tone of personal information, but actually nothing that juicy is contained in it?
So we have probably a few minutes down to the closing, and let me ask you to share probably the best message and the best stories that you had. I can share mine, where I was scamming a scammer, and I said, well, I usually catch bad guys that do this kind of thing, and I think your modus operandi can be categorized as a scammer. And the response that I received, oh, you do this kind of thing, can you give me all the credit card of people that you scammed? And I was facepalm moments. Like, I tend to catch this kind of people. You asking this kind of thing, it's probably a criminal offense.
Oh my gosh, that's the best story I think I've ever heard. I don't have a good story like that at all. That's amazing. That is the best story I think I've ever heard ever.
Well, it must have been naive. It must have been a new starter.
Yeah, that's quite crazy. I like that story. I'm going to tell people that you said that.
But do you have one yourself, your best favorite one?
Not in the same way as that, but I did have a funny story the other day, actually, going into a shop where, and you've probably all been in this situation where somebody wants your personal data, a company, not a scammer, a company wants your personal data. And we all know with the GDPR, there's now quite strict rules on, how that has to be gathered and the consent that has to be given and so on and so forth. So I go into this shop and I'm buying a craft knife to do some sort of arts and crafts with. And I put it down to pay for it. And the store assistant said to me, oh, well, because you're buying a knife, there's new rules in the UK now where you need to provide us with your name, address, phone number, and a Twitter handle or something. And I thought, so I have to provide you with all of this information to buy a craft knife? This seems a bit odd. So I said, oh, I don't know what regulation you're referring to. I'll just quickly Google it and see. And she was like, well, it's not just for knives, it's for all products now. And I was thinking, that's a bit weird. So I said to her, well, I'm not sure that's massively compliant with, the data privacy rules and the ICO and things like that. I don't think you're allowed to collect data like this, actually. I don't think the ICO would find this very funny to find out about it. And she turned to me and she said to me, I don't need you getting aggressive and threatening me with this ICO, whoever they are. And it just made me laugh because it was just so funny. But the sheet of paper, people were writing their name, address, telephone number, Twitter handle, all this stuff on this sheet of paper. And I think it just goes to show that, generally speaking, in society, we really don't understand how valuable data is.
Yeah, I agree. And considering we are giving, so actually having this conversation with millennials, and specifically have a very great story around that. So I recently posted a write-up on the Face app, and I have absolutely nothing against app, but that app actually stole data purposely, or stored all the information, and in the term of reference, you could do whatever you want with that information as long as it's handed over to them. And I started telling people this kind of thing, and the answer that I received, I don't care, my face, my data, they can have whatever they want. And they were generally business owner or social media influencer. And I made them 2 or 3 cases, and I say, I don't care if they clone my profile. They don't get this stuff, specifically on the new generation. I mean, I'm getting old, maybe I'm getting old and ranty, but I don't think there is a perception, maybe because of the amount of data we give out. What do you think, Lisa?
No, I 100% agree. And I think the other thing people say to me a lot is, well, I've got nothing to hide. And I said, well, I've got nothing to hide, but just because I've got nothing to hide doesn't mean I want everybody to know everything. I don't want you to know why I went to the doctors, or I don't want you to know what I'm having for dinner necessarily. That doesn't mean I've got something to hide. I just feel a bit like we've got to a point where, people maybe don't value privacy like they used to, or, don't really view that all this personal data is your privacy. And, once it's out there, you've lost control of it. You can't get it back. It's gone. And I don't really understand how we got to this point as a society.
I think the society is social engineering us to give up the data.
Yes, exactly.
So on the closing point, can you give our audience your top 3 suggestions on protecting yourself from the social engineering, and your top 3 things that you're seeing as social engineering attack? Go.
Okay, top 3 things would have to be locking down all the information possible within the realms of your job, so people can't get intelligence on you as an individual. Definitely top tip. Second one, go and do some training on social engineering. Go and learn more about it, read these books, start to be aware of how it works and the psychology behind it, because you'll identify things about yourself that you think, wow, okay, I'm super vulnerable here. I need to know this. And the final thing is kind of like a self-reflective thing that I tell people, and that's, what are you hungry for in life? What is it you really, really want? Because if you can identify that, that's what the attackers are looking to identify too. Let's say you want to be a professional speaker. If the attackers can identify that through your social media posts, then they've got a brilliant way of manipulating you straight away by saying, oh, look at this speaking gig we've got you. So I think thinking about, okay, what am I hungry for? That's maybe your area of weakness that you need to be a little bit more paranoid about if someone approaches you.
So don't be greedy, or recognize what you greed about.
Exactly. Be humble.
All right, Lisa, has been an absolute pleasure having you on board, and I really hope to see you at one of your speaking event, or invite you again back to other more stories. Maybe it was a shared session again with Stu and yourself, and we can do the most challenging social engineering attacks or
Yeah, I
stories.
think that would be brilliant. Definitely. I'm always up for that. It was great fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And just as a reminder for everybody, join our community, post the question. And we have an event coming up on the 31st with Cloud Security Alliance, IC Square, and ISA. Stu is probably going to speak up that. Lisa and everybody else are most welcome to come. We still have some ticket available. It's the first time actually ever that I managed to social engineer all the couple of organizations to come under the same roof. And we have also as a special guest, the guys from OWASP. So big
Awesome.
name, big panels, come and social engineer us into answering your question.
Brilliant.
Thank you, everybody. So the podcast is going to be up in more or less a week. I'm going to break it down in two, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. This was the second part of the interview with Lisa Forte. Hope you enjoy the chat and the banter, the funny joke and the suggestion, and I hope this has been information. As always, please join the community, participate with us, ask the question, or suggest your next speaker that should come to the podcast. I hope you enjoy, and I hope this has been informational. Good day, good night, or good afternoon, regardless of wherever you are. This was your host Francesco Cipollone as part of the Cloud Security Alliance and IC Square, which shares security information for the community. Thank you and goodbye.